started. And this is gonna be like a serious, but yet try to be fun situation here. I'm gonna let the panelists introduce themselves. My name is Rain. I'm the co-founder and editor of Latinx Geeks. And next.
Oh, okay. That was short.
Yep.
She does a lot at LXG. I'm Alexis. I'm the other co-founder of Latinx Geeks. And you can find us everywhere at Latinx Geeks. Real simple. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
All the things.
All the things.
How you doing? My name is Valerie Complex. I am a freelance journalist and screenwriter. I'm a little disappointed. I thought there would be more people here. I feel like this is one of the panels that's important for people to attend. And look, listen, everybody is free to attend what they want, but I can't help but not express my disappointment. But we're gonna have a good time anyway.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, seriously.
My name's Sam Campbell. I am Two-Spirit. I use they, them pronouns. I do a lot of work for Indigenous rights. I do a lot of gender sexuality talks. You can find my TEDx talk on YouTube for Gender is a Universe, or the Gender Universe. I don't remember what I called it. And so this is my second ClexaCon paneling, and it's really cool to start seeing more of these types of panels. And I was in one earlier, and I've kind of figured out the thing. You need to have a celebrity on your panel to get the thing up. Especially, it's hard.
I'm not
And
a
Annie.
celebrity.
That's a lie. Yeah.
It's especially hard when Amber Benson is like right behind us. I just feel like my back is probably up against hers, and I'm ready.
Okay, hi, my name is Annie Segarra, online known as Annie Elaine. I am a YouTuber, content creator, writer, I do a lot of stuff. And I identify as a disabled, queer, non-binary woman, and my pronouns are she or they. I like my pronouns used like interchangeably if you can. A fun thing. So I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which means that basically most things in my body are malfunctioning. But my physical disabilities involve like fragility and weakness of my joints and muscles. And like I have trouble like dislocating bones all the time, among like a variety of other symptoms.
Okay. Sorry, just.
Okay.
All right. So we want to start off a little different than it's going to relate. Trust me, it doesn't sound like it's going to relate, but it's going to relate. To ask the panelists, what is, if you have one, your favorite piece of queer media? It could be a show, it could be a TV, it could be a movie, comic book. If you have one, what is it? I'll tie it in. Trust. Anybody
Who wants
go
to
first?
go first?
I think, I classify it as queer media. Xena.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It counts.
There
So, you know,
That is
Yeah.
the
It's-
queer media.
I there's definitely more that are like more relevant now. Like One Day at a Time is definitely at my
Yes.
top right now, but Xena will always forever be like one of those that helped create me and make me feel like it was okay, even if it wasn't, even if it was all mostly subtext. Listening even to the background commentary of like the actors talking about it, and they're making like jokes about, oh, we're sleeping next to each other, you should hold my hand, you know. It's like it made it feel even more like real because they were comfortable with it too, and they were like pushing for it also.
Oh man, I don't queer media.
Yeah.
If you have one.
If you have
I
people
do.
I mean, I can go, so you can have more time to
Let me
think.
get some more time.
Okay. I feel guilty about this, but
Be
like,
honest, because I'm gonna call you out if you leave. I know what it is.
what is it? Imagine you and me.
Imagine me and you.
Me and you. It flips all the time. But yeah, it's like it's so precious. Adorable, and I can't help it. Like sometimes I just put it on because I'm like, I just want to watch a cute movie. I'm like, oh look, it's on HBO, and she knows that because I'll be like, hey, you want to watch it right now? And she's like, no. I'm like, okay, I'll watch it by myself.
It's a lie. I never say no to that movie. Yes, you do. Unless it's like 2.
But yeah, because like, I mean, come on, like, You're a Wanker #9 is hilarious. And they're like,
Classic.
ooh, let me put my hands on your belly. And I'm like, project.
From your
It's just so precious.
diaphragm.
And it's so white. We're so precious. And they're so attractive. Yeah.
I have it now. It's this movie, and nobody probably has heard of it. If you have, 10 extra points to you. It's a movie called Orlando, and it was one of those movies that I watched when I was up at hours that I shouldn't have been up, on a night that I shouldn't have been up late, and it was a school night. And, it just came on TV, and it was this bizarre, to me at the time when I saw it, I was like 11 or 12, and like this bizarre movie about this woman who in Victorian England gets cursed. I will identify them as they. They get cursed by Queen Elizabeth to live forever, and they first live as a man for 100 years, and then they live as a woman at 100 years. So their gender and everything literally is switched at the 100-year mark, and all of the things that they put other women through, they had to experience in the next 100 years. Very interesting movie. I recommend. It stars Tilda Swinton.
Oh, that makes sense.
And and I recommend that you watch it and let me know what you think.
Cool.
God, that sounds so cool. Probably at the top of my head are the San Junipero episode.
Oh my God. I changed my mind. That I have also watched like 30 times this year.
You have to. And Sense8.
Yes.
So that's like, yeah, those are up there. I bought myself a San Junipero, like, neon light kind of shirt thing. I was like, if I bought merch from it, then it has to be up there.
Okay. The reason why I ask that is because I've asked this of different people of all types of shapes and sizes before, and most of the time they name something that if you just look at them, they don't necessarily seem like they reflect themselves in there. So in your favorite piece of queer media, do you feel represented at all?
I am definitely not a white British lady. And if I am, I've been very confused for a very long time. So, no.
Anybody else?
No. If any of you have looked up Orlando, then no.
I like to think I'm Xena. But yeah, no, it's again, 2 white ladies. I am a martial artist though, and it was actually started because of Xena. So that
So you go swinging from the ceiling with the chakram. And
I do own a chakram.
Yes.
It's hanging on my wall at home.
Gosh.
But like myself, my identity isn't represented in there, but my identity was definitely influenced by it.
Yeah. Gotcha. Do you feel
Me?
Yeah.
No. But that's not to say that I don't want to. It's weird. I don't want to like be like, actually, I'm out there, which I'm not really. As a chubby Latinx disabled queer person, no, not really. But there are like other things that just happen to not be my favorite because of specifically cripping up, because it's an abled person playing a disabled person.
Mm-hmm.
I can't put it at the I just can't put it at the top of my things that I want to watch. But there's stuff like a Margarita with a Straw that involves like and that's actually kind of brown facing too, that actress. An Indian girl with cerebral palsy who is in a queer relationship. And there's obviously the film Frida, about Frida Kahlo, even though they very minimally showcased her queerness in that film. But so there's like a couple of examples out there, but so I just want to give them a little shout out. But obviously there's still a lot more to be done in that realm.
Okay, so when was the first time you actually, and this time it actually doesn't have to be queer media, when is the first time you actually did feel represented, if you ever have? What about mine?
Yeah, what about yours?
Do I have to answer this question? Okay.
Your moderator and panelist.
Okay. See, now that I've heard your answers, I feel like I should change mine, but I should be honest.
Yes.
And my favorite piece in queer media movie would be Imagine Me and You.
And you said you were going to call me
And my
out.
TV show was, please forgive me, South of Nowhere. So,
Hey. I used to watch that.
so do I feel represented in any of those? Wow, I'm really not white, so no. And both of those were very, very, very white. I mean, South of Nowhere did have black characters, but none of them were queer, so yeah, no. I do not feel represented in any of my favorite pieces of queer media, which is sad to me, but I guess we'll get onto that next. So, you guys, when have you ever, if you have, felt represented? If fully represented, preferably, but if not, then partially, and tell why it was partial enough. Well,
Not queer?
it could be anything.
I'll give you two examples. Not queer, where I felt represented, was totally, it was this horror film called Night of the Demons, 1980, I think it came out in 1987 or 1988, but I saw it as a kid, and I just remember this one black character who actually lived. He lived throughout the entire movie, and one scene that I'll never forget as long as I live is, it's about demons, and it's in the scene the demons are sort of approaching him, and he turns to the chick. She's dressed up like Alice in Wonderland, very blonde hair, blue eye. And he turned to her and was like, "They won't get me," and he went and jumped out the window. and he went and jumped out the window. And then when he realized that he was still alive, he ran for the wall and
was
just
smart.
completely left her behind. And I was like, I feel represented here. I was like, absolutely. But as far as like queer media, Pariah, the film Pariah by Dee Reese, is where I was like, you know what? There are good queer stories out there with semi-happy endings with people who look like me. So that was the first time I really felt fully represented.
Awesome. Love Pariah too. Yes. So that would be my answer, so I don't have to answer this later. That would be mine. Pariah. Anybody else want to go? Sure. Sam. Go for
Okay.
it.
The very first time I ever felt represented positively was the movie Spirit with Little Creek. I really liked him, even though he wasn't from my same tribe. He was not Pocahontas, and he was represented in a way that was just so like normal. He was just a young man like trying to live his life in this like colonial thing, and it was pretty cool. And I think the only other movie that I actually feel really positively about is Smoke Signals.
Yes.
I don't know. Yeah. And because that one's like, a modern day like storytelling. It's not this whitewashed Hollywood fake Indian movie, with a white savior and all this stuff. It was made for us, by us, and I think those two are still the only positive representations that I feel like personally connected to.
I just recently saw Smoke Signals for the first time.
So
I really
good.
love it. Yeah, it was a great movie.
I think there's two again, and the first one where like I had the realization that I was seeing somebody I felt represented by for the first time, and it made me like emotional to have that realization, was this movie called Mosquita y Mari.
Oh, yes. That's a good one.
Where I saw for the first time, oh my God, I'm getting a little water in my eyes right now. Like, it was the first time I'd seen a chubby Latina teenager like exploring her sexuality and finding herself, and I was like, holy, that never existed for me. And I think that, because of the representation that I had growing up of the LGBT community, it was very predominantly like white and thin and femme, thanks to like stuff like the L word, so I don't know, there was definitely a part of me that thought, I can't be gay because I don't look like that. And like finally seeing a character like that, I was like kind of heartbroken. Like how much easier would it have been for me to make these self-discoveries about myself if I had any kind of role model, any kind of example of, you know, an image of myself, a reflection of myself to show me that it's possible for them and it's possible for you as well. And that was just kind of, you know, physical imagery right? Like a literal mirror. But then as far as like all around identity for me, I've brought her up already, but like that would be like a Frida Kahlo's narrative, because she was a very visibly disabled Latina artist. Most of her art is about her disabilities and about her chronic pain, about her miscarriages, about like being isolated. A lot of her paintings are self-portraits because she spent most of her time in bed and alone because of her illnesses and because of her chronic pain. And outside of that, she also was heavily photographed being in bed. And if you're ever sick in bed, you probably know that you don't really ask somebody, hey, grab a snapshot of me while I'm in bed. It's not like the first thing that comes to mind. But what that tells me is that she wanted people to see her in that state, right? She wanted people to know that she used a canvas that comes over her bed for her to paint. And she wanted people to see that, like, she has to be alone in her bed all the time, so if her friends were friends, they came over and visited and hung out in her bed with her. So that kind of visibility plus the element of her queerness was very empowering for me to see, like, damn, and that lady's an icon, and that lady everybody knows and everybody's a fan of for the most part, except for her political views. So that showed me, like, well, I don't know. What I want to say is that I do definitely have like quotes from her and like portraits of her in my room, and whenever my pain levels get really high and like I'm feeling like, yep, this is it. This is the way I go. I like look at these quotes and these portraits, and I kind of like hear her like angry Spanish yelling at me like, if I can do it, you can do it, kid. Like, so it's very, I'm glad that those figures exist for myself.
That's awesome. Alexis, did you want to go?
Yeah, I don't think I've had a character that completely encompasses my identities. I think so far the closest that it has gone is Elaine Alvarez, because she's this like smart Latinx queer girl that's just, she's first generation, and you know she's struggling with her Spanish, which even though I was fluent up until like 5 years old, I have lost some of it or just get nervous speaking it, and she looks nothing like me. I mean, she's a white Latinx and I am definitely not. I am very visibly Latinx. So that's very much different. But I mean, I remember like her fangirling over Buffy and all those small moments about her realizing who she is. Like, I could definitely relate to. And even though I'm not out to my family, that whole section where she is coming out was pretty much like this, if it could go any way, which is not going to, because I know my mom, this is how I want it to go. So that's probably the closest I've gotten, but I'm still waiting for that character that will be me completely.
Nice. Why do you think it is so hard for media to seem to get representation that would be closer to us? I feel like the people in this panel are pretty representative of what the queer community actually looks like. So why is it that we don't seem to see ourselves in queer media?
I think they're scared.
Fear?
I think a lot of people say that, like, I know a lot of producers say like it won't sell, you know, and we know that's not true. For me personally, I know that we don't see Indigenous stories because we don't have Indigenous stories to be told from the queer perspective as much because of colonization, because like the church came in and killed most of us, you know, so it's really hard to get a hold of these stories that people are willing to share, and Indigenous folks are really stepping it up now and like going out of their way to create new content and create content that we want to see correctly, because Hollywood did a really good job of creating the one idea of a native who rides a horse, wears a headdress, and lives out in the plains, you know? And there's hundreds and hundreds of different tribes with different practices and different regalia, and we're not all the same, and it's hard to process that for a lot of producers, and it's hard to like move away from that pre-built stereotype for them. And so when we create content, it's seen at like Sundance festivals, and it's like this big thing and it's celebrated, but then nobody wants to share it wider because they're like, well, this is a niche film, when it's not, right? So I think the difficulty is people not seeing the value in diversity and not feeling like just because I'm not seeing myself on the screen, it won't sell, which, hello, we're not seeing ourselves on the screen. So if you show us, it will sell. Like, we will buy it. Like, these conventions, like, we see people are just so ready and willing to just like run back and forth to all these panels because it's the first time they get to see themselves, you know, represented in like a panel or in like pictures and art and all this kind of stuff. So it's so cool, especially seeing people come to this and it's their first queer space. You know, that is magical. And so to have that same reaction in film, I think people are really underestimating what that reaction would be like.
Yeah.
TV's a lot kinder to diverse stories and stuff like that, so we're seeing more there. But a lot of it is racism, because we know that diverse stories make money. That's not the problem. The problem is racism, and the racist ass clowns who sit on these boards and things like that and determine that they are, you know, the status quo, and that's what people want to see. And we have, you know, it's good that you're seeing like more writers' rooms being diverse and more diverse shows, and people are really making headway and breaking through, because without them, we'd still be getting the same white bread, die-hard bullshit. I mean, it's not bad, but I mean, we've seen that movie 1,000 times, and with a bunch of different actors and a bunch of different titles. We've seen that shit before. And I think that, you know, it's just inherent racism, because look at the $1 billion that Black Panther made, and the Fast and Furious series made billions of dollars, and every movie The Rock is in, whether it sucks or not, makes a ton of money. We see films like Us, where you know, Lupita Nyong'o is the lead actress for the first time since she's won her Oscar. Is the lead in a film, and it makes 10 times over its budget, and yet people of color and trans people can't find work. But thank God for shows like Pose and One Day at a Time, and people like Lena Waithe, who are, you know, helping to sort of open those doors, you know, kick down those doors of sorts, and show that, you know, media is not just, you know, media does not have to be just one way. And also, I just think a lot of times they just have a hard time writing people in general. Yeah. Like, if it's not them, like white males who dominate this industry, if it's not them, they can't even write white women properly. So, God, if we expect them to write about us, we're just fucked, right?
Yeah, I think part of it is also that they can't imagine us being more than one thing. Like, if they have a so-called diverse character, it's gonna be someone that's just one thing. They're either gonna be just Black or just gay or just Latinx, and that is their whole role. And we definitely have more than one identity. I mean, I'm pansexual, Latinx, a woman, you know, dealing with mental health, and I have so much more to me than just that. And they can't think of us living more than just this little box. But luckily, I mean, we have writers now, like in the past, I don't know, maybe 5 years, that have stepped us and given us the stories that we deserve, the stories that tell our whole story instead of just one small part of it. I mean, come on, that Thanksgiving episode in Master of None was, I mean, I'm not black, but that was the realest thing I have ever seen. I have heard so many stories like that, and it is the story of her being black and queer and dealing with her family about that. And I mean, you're just starting to see the stories, and I want more of that. I need more of that. Like, I'm tired of seeing just that one Latinx character that's just like a seductress and is gonna sleep with everyone. Because
and she has that really weird accent, like, oh my god, like,
yes,
you know,
and like
Is
I'm
that accent?
not
Where is
like
it
that.
from?
I can't talk to people. If you guys saw me in the front row of that Black Lightning panel, I will die left and right. I don't work like that. Like, I
Yeah, we all know
malfunction. So yeah, seriously, give us more.
Okay.
I guess to add to that, I think that there's definitely like a kind of economic glass ceiling that exists when it comes to creating media such as TV and film, because all the time, diverse communities, they'll say, when are we going to see ourselves on screen? And the response is always, well, then make it yourself.
Oh, God.
Okay, with what money, my friend?
that phrase.
With what money? Yes, I would love to create my own stuff. I would love it, because intersectionality is not just a panel. It's literally how we live our lives and what our communities are. My community, my friends, my chosen family is majority queer and disabled people. And like we live in a completely different culture than like other groups. And that is never represented. We talk about how like we're all, because of our disabilities and chronic illnesses, we struggle with our income, we struggle with poverty, and like plan things out like communal living, and like maybe we can all like get one house together and put money together and we'll all just have our separate bedrooms, like which from there we're like, you know, that actually would be so great to see like in media. Like, how great would it be to see like a shared house of like queer disabled femmes, and like how they live their lives, how they find love, how they get their jobs, because it's something that we never get to see, including representation of like ambulatory wheelchair users, which there are like zero, and that affects me on a daily basis in regards to like harassment and potential for violence, because when people see me stand up for my wheelchair, they immediately assume that I'm fraud and that I'm like using it to manipulate a system, whether that's because they think I get help from the government, or like here at ClexaCon, where they might assume like, oh, she's just trying to get to the front of the line, or whatever kind of prejudice idea that people have. That happens because of the way representation exists right now, because every time you see a wheelchair user stand up on a TV show or in a movie, it's met with like this dramatic music that says they were faking it all along. So I'll circle back. Like, yeah, we want to create media where we are seen and our stories are told. It's a matter of, right now, there are people with power and people with privilege who are making the media that we see, and you can't write what you don't know, and you can't produce what you don't know, and you cannot really act what you don't know either. So we have to find ways to break those glass ceilings and get into the room where it happens and make these things for ourselves.
I love that.
Yes.
I love that you slid that in there.
Did you finally listen to the album? Shh. She refused for a very long time because she wanted to see it live. Sorry.
Still need to see it live. I'll just have to be bitter about that forever. So I was going to ask a question, but I think I'm going to pivot a little bit to try to, I'm going to jump around a little bit. So basically, I'm going to go to, what do you think in more recent media, because a lot of the things that we've named that we felt represented ourselves were things that are, at this point, a little dated. I mean, yeah, some of them are a few years old, but like, what are the modern day, who are basically the people right now who are getting it right, who are producing things right now in the last, and I'm gonna give you a deadline of the last 2 years, and that's it. So 2018, 2019, not very long.
18.
So not very long. Who in the last 2 years is getting it right and getting at least closer to representing you?
Oh,
If
me?
you can find someone.
No.
Or, you know what? It doesn't even have to be representing you. That you just feel like they're doing a good job in queer media.
The creators of Pose.
Yeah.
They have done such an amazing job, I think, casting that show with not visibly, but like, I don't know what the word for it is, but authentic, queer people of color, trans people, trans men and women, and,
People who live the life.
Afro-Latinx. Yeah. And I mean, there's so many Afro-Latinx people on that show, and that is something you do not see in TV. Like, if you see a Afro-Latinx actor, most likely they're playing someone that is black, and they don't incorporate them being possibly Latinx. It's just gonna be them playing a black character. I mean, Gina Torres mentions that all the time, that like people don't know she's Latinx, or they assume she only knows English, or that she has only been able to play black characters, and that's only part of her identity. And Pose has done such a good job incorporating those people, and I think that we really need more of that. But I think they've done an amazing job, and also it's just really well shot and well written, and
Looks
I love
gorgeous.
it.
It's just a
Oh
good
my gosh,
show in
it's
general.
So good. Yeah.
Pose, Lena Waithe,
I know we wish we had more.
Dee Reese is doing pretty good work. Ava DuVernay is doing pretty good work in terms of like getting women and black women jobs.
It's important. Need that work.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a controversial.
Go for it.
Do it.
Okay, so maybe this isn't okay. So this is controversial in the sense that it's not a good example, but I wanted to point out anyway. No, I'm not saying no.
Okay.
Because I had to think about it in my head, and I was like, well, Tyler Perry's not a good example.
Oh yeah.
So I thought I had to.
It's like
I rectified the situation. So the answer is Dee Reese and
Yeah.
Ava DuVernay.
I'll give it to you that he's getting some people of color jobs, but that's all I can.
He gets them
That's all I
started,
can
But at
do.
what cost?
That's where we went wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, I will, because you said it, but I will say it too. Speaking about Afro-Latinx people, One Day at a Time
Yes.
is a great show. I absolutely love it, but they have like 2 Afro-Latinx people, and not in like any major role. And when we see her family, they are very much white Cubans for the most part. They have some people a little bit darker than me, but not really. And being Latinx isn't just one thing. I'm going to talk
Right.
about that tomorrow too, but we have Asian Latinx and, Afro-Latinx and so many different types that just saying that there is this one type is not authentic. So even though they're great and they've done a great job, I think, showing a Latinx family, they need to do better in expanding that. And hopefully they will get the chance, because hopefully someone will get them and we'll have them back and they will prove to do better. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I think there's a very important aspect to it in like moving away from just like people actors into like cartoons. I think Rebecca
That works.
Sugar is doing a really good job.
Yes. Yes.
It's Steven Universe is one of my favorite. Watching it with my younger brother it's our pastime. It's our time to bond together, and his absolute love for Garnet and Stevani helped him understand like my non-binary like being a little bit better. Like he got it, but then seeing like Stevani and Garnet and how they're like just them, like they're not like Steven, then they're not Connie, they're Stevani, and it's like it kind of makes something click for you, So I think Rebecca Sugar's on a really good track. And yeah, I think for the most part I agree, like One Day at a Time's doing some awesome work, not just in like the queer sense, but like expanding out in type of like topics that we don't see: consent, drug addiction, PTS, like all of this kind of stuff. It's really cool. And being able to, like, again, like me and my mom watched that one together, and it was very awkward sitting there with her during the episode where Elena's talking about getting a hotel with Sid for the first time, and she's sitting there kind of like side-eyeing me, and I'm like, you know, it's on my phone. But it's a cool, and then Sid, just as a character, has made me just feel, I think that is one other character that I feel just so represented with in terms of my like non-binary thing. Like the non-binary heart Valentine, I had to buy one today because it just made me cry so hard. So it's like those little instances are doing really good. There's always room to better and to like expand and do more, but those instances are phenomenal right now, and I want to see more of that in other shows.
I agree a million times, and apologies for my glasses. I'm like catching a migraine, so like had to take a bit of knobber to that. I don't really have a lot of queer disabled people of color come to mind in regards to media. So typically for these kind of conversations, I can just focus on like disability representation and that there's like two things there to mention. Like there's a part that pleases me and a part that is still very disappointing. I am pleased that we're seeing a couple more instances where disabled actors are playing disabled roles, like stuff like Speechless. So that's great. My disappointing part is that we're still mainly seeing white disabled characters and only white disabled characters ever. Like they're never of color or queer, except for actually today, if you have Netflix, the show Special came out, and it's about a gay white guy with a cerebral palsy, and he, the actor it's kind of autobiographical, so he like wrote, produced, and is leading it. So that's really cool. Again, I just like, I'm so ready for like way more diverse representation, so that like, because for me it has very political consequences when we don't have that, and we're living, it's not like media representation is going to fix everything, obviously, but it will help if there is less ignorance about diverse communities. Then hopefully that can minimize the violence and discrimination and inequality that people face just even a little bit.
Thank you. Okay, so before I open the floor up, because I just looked at the time, oops. So questions. There was a question I wanted to ask that I was really honestly, to be honest, very nervous about asking. And it's mostly because I've noticed a theme in a lot of the panels that are like this. And also thank you guys all for coming out. But we noticed a theme going throughout all the people of color panels and just different diversity panels, that a lot of people were talking about self-care, and a lot of people were talking about depression, and a lot of people were also talking about not necessarily feeling safe in what's supposed to be safe spaces, like in queer spaces. So if you're doing great, let me know. But if you're not doing great, also let me know. So how is
They're partying very hard.
They're really partying hard, and it's hard to speak over them. I'm not very loud, but basically my question is,
oh my God,
how is your ClexaCon going? It's not to throw shade or anything, but like honestly, I just wanted to know, and I asked if it was okay if I asked this question. I mean, how are they getting louder? This is as loud as I get right now. I'm sorry. But how is your guys' ClexaCon going? Like good or bad?
Like that.
You feel
Feel
drowned
like
out?
I'm not even joking. Like,
Like other people are being louder than us. Getting
Well,
the more
I don't even
attention
know what
than
to
us.
say.
The metaphor.
Yeah, I'm 0 for 2, so this is like the second time been in a panel, and it's been
that's
this
second
been
panel
louder
too.
than we've been able to, to talk, and I don't know. I'm just kind of sort of disillusioned by this whole experience. I'm just being honest.
It's not to be a negative thing. I was just curious.
I mean, it's a reality.
I Queer spaces are just so overwhelmingly white, and sometimes there's not really much you can do because demographic and location presents some barriers to that. So, I like the guest list this year is pretty diverse.
Yeah, better.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
Long size.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Good and bad. I've had good and bad experiences so far myself.
Yeah.
Every con has the.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've
Yeah.
walked out of New
Downs.
York Comic Con a few times.
So.
Yeah. This is gonna be our second year. Third year here, which the first year was so white.
Yeah.
Hey,
But this is our second year doing Invisible Latinx, but I'm still getting excited every time I see another Latinx person. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're here too. Like, we had the hardest time trying to find Latinx speakers for the panel because some of them were blocked by financial problems and couldn't make it here, even though they had tried really hard. But just trying to find other people that we wanted was hard because we're like, well, who's actually here, that can speak on this? But it is, I think, difficult sometimes having to always be the minority in a large group because you feel like you can be either excluded or just like your feelings on it don't matter sometimes, like
Tokenism. Right?
yeah. And like it's exhausting. Sometimes it is exhausting, and I like what I like and I don't really care, but like when people don't have the same reactions to certain things in the show, like doesn't matter what it is, and because of who you are, like because I am Latinx, like maybe my feelings on that subject are not valid, and I'm like,
Why not Okay, I'm just bringing it up again because we all exist at different intersections and we like the things that we like and stuff like that. But there's nothing worse than feeling like your how you feel is invalid and your thoughts are, and of course it's not everybody that's a part of that fandom, but feeling like you can't speak up on some of the injustices that exist.
Having to wonder how much hate you're gonna get for just stating your opinion.
Like when they introduced the one indigenous character and she's like a shaman and stuff and like dies, and I'm like,
and is the
cool
is the actress?
I have no idea. I didn't bother looking.
I thought she wasn't.
I don't know.
So
I don't know, to be honest.
I want to say, like, personally, for me, my ClexaCon's been going pretty great.
I've
had
fun.
Like,
We've had a good group.
We've had a really cool,
Stop
like,
looking
I've
at
been
your
just,
phone.
but then again, I've been mostly just kind of talking on panels.
Yeah.
So I haven't been really interacting. But I've been, again, also since year one, and I've definitely seen a positive change over the couple of years.
They're trying.
We had a really awesome conversation on the first day yesterday. We had the decolonizing queer spaces, and that one, I think we brought up a lot of important things about how, yes, it's so white, and we have all of these different issues with tokenism and feeling excluded, feeling unsafe, feeling like we're going to be stared at for being who we are. Like one of my panelists and really good friends, Holly, she handmade her own traditional headwear and had feathers on it, and she was so scared. We had like Twitter conversations, and she was almost crying, talking about the internal debate she had about wearing it because she was scared of people staring. And so it's one of those things where education needs to be like more prominent. We can't have like all the diversity panels in these tiny rooms. Like we need one in there. We need one in the big room, and we need to fill that room. And
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just the last thing. Actually, Alexis, you said something on the panel that we did that I absolutely loved. You said we need more than one.
Oh yeah.
And whether that means, the way you described it, I loved it, but whether that means more than one diversity panel, more than one queer person of color on each panel, but also you said we're not just here for diversity panels. We're artists, we're filmmakers, we're this, we're that, and we should be on those panels too. you know,
Absolutely.
and I think the way that you articulated that was just so wonderful.
Oh, thanks. I try.
Okay, my experiences at conferences are like, I feel like kind of unique to myself as a chronically ill person because I don't generally go to a lot of panels myself because I'm usually kind of just resting up for like the panels that I have to do. So I kind of just stay in bed and like conserve my energy as much as possible. I know ClexaCon had like issues with accessibility, specifically like the policy that they released, which got met with a lot of very upset people, and I was one of them. They got in contact with me about it in regards to like how do they do better.
What
so
was the policy?
Oh, there was a lot of like garbage stuff. Like
Yeah.
there was language like a disability doesn't entitle you to enter a space early or something like that, or doesn't entitle you to like, I don't know, to be at the front of the line or something like that. And I'm like, ooh, no, that's not how you talk about accessibility at all, because accessibility is not a freaking entitlement. Accessibility is a right. So like there was just a lot of language that was like really messed up. And it was specifically that word entitled, and specifically in situations where like disabled people need to access seating spaces prior to other people. It's a matter of like safety. It's a matter of they have to get into a space without the risk of like people like pushing them or running into them. They have to like accommodate themselves into their seats with that safety in mind. And in regards to like lines, this is funny. Another part that was messed up about the language was like, if you have difficulty standing for long periods, then you're welcome to bring your own chair, right? Like carry a chair around.
And if you can't bring one, you can rent one
You can
with
rent one.
money from us.
Yeah.
I'm glad they changed that.
Which is illegal.
Which was later clarified to me. They're like, oh, we mean like we have like some canes with seats on them. I'm like, all right. Okay, sure. Like, I guess, I don't know. Then they told me that like what would be happening after that was like, oh, they could be offered like a return time. Like one of the volunteers can like mark, when the person arrived and like allow them to come back in but wait in a chair somewhere else, maybe because they needed a quiet space to like de-stimulate, or because they needed to have a seat because of chronic pain or other disabilities like heart conditions, etc. And someone at the last panel that I did told me that they were having difficulty, like they were making the attempt, which was something that I also let them know about. I'm like, a lot of disabled people are gonna try and like push their limits, and so like when they tell you they've reached their limit, it's not because they're trying to manipulate you. It's because they tried their best to push the limit and to keep up with everybody else, and they're realizing that they reached their limit. So someone said, yeah, I was trying to wait in the line, and then I couldn't stand up in that line any longer. And they're like, they don't let people sit on the floor, I think that's the policy. They said, and this was a larger person too, so they're like, okay, here, you can have this seat cane, which the seat is like this big. Like you can't do that. So I was like, what happened to that thing you told me about that you could tell them, well, you can go have a seat on one of the lounge couches or whatever, and we'll hold the spot for you, something like that. Anyway, so all that being said, accessibility is something that needs to be a priority in these spaces. This is a topic I hit a lot, especially as like a queer and disabled person. Like whenever I attempt to go into queer spaces, like accessibility is always kind of left on the back burner. And it's really tough, because as a person who is LGBT+, you are seeking your family, and you're seeking your safe space. You're seeking a place that feels like home, a place where you feel welcome. And basically what happens here, whether it's because of racial privilege, able-bodied privilege, basically what you can like interpret from their actions is, well, we don't care if you are here. We don't need you here, and we don't necessarily want you here. That may not be the intention, but that is what people get, and that is how people feel.
That's what they communicate. Everything you do is communication.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you run into any of those situations, I really hope that you send them an email, that you like at them on Twitter, whatever you can do, because I really think that needs to like really, they need to know that the majority of the guests that come to this conference, they care, and they care that disabled people feel welcome in this space, and they care that everyone feels safe in this space. And I think the only way that's going to happen is if they realize that this is something that is important to all their guests. So it would really mean a lot if you did that, if you got in contact with them.
Okay.
One of the good things is like they are receptive to feedback, and you know, I am grateful for the people that I have met here who have turned into really great friends, and the people that I've learned a lot from. It was Sally who sort of made me realize that the indigenous American folks are often left out of the conversation, as well as learning that, you know, and acknowledging that accessibility is also another part of the discussion that gets omitted. And so there are things that I've learned here, and you know, my hotel's paid for, and you know, through scholarship and stuff like that. So it's the little things that you can appreciate, you know, about this con. It's just, you know, ups and downs like everything else.
They're slowly improving every year, and it's really great. Like, they are very receptive.
They're really awesome with that. They'll take your suggestions. And again, I didn't bring that up to like throw shade at anybody or to cause a problem, because I was like thinking there would be good and bad things, just like at every con. It was just something we were talking about honestly prior to this meeting. Like, well, what is this called, a panel? So sorry. Prior to the panel, and that's kind of how I got the idea to maybe I should just ask how people are doing. But good and bad, like always. But always improving, because this is like my third time coming here, and I've seen way more people of color than I have, especially the first year. So there's definitely, and way more discussion about disability, and way more, like, definitely did not even realize how much Indigenous people were not represented at things like this before until last year when they had the decolonizing, when they had that Indigenous panel, and then this year decolonizing core spaces panel. So, we have a few minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Questions and comments. I just want to say thank you to all of you for showing up and doing multiple panels. I know you've done like 4 and 5 panels.
And we have more.
So in terms of like access and figuring out how we get more people to do varying panels or less panels and less work, so it's not so exploitative would be great. But thank you for that. So my question is going to be about, I guess I'm curious as to what are the metrics or questions that you're asking yourself when you're evaluating meaningfulness in terms of queer representation and intersectional queer representation, because I'm specifically thinking about like 2 shows. I'll name a show that I like and a show that I hate. One would be the show that I like, Steven Universe, and the other one would be Shrill, that I fucking hate. And I think that in both of those shows, they do a pretty decent job of like having somewhat complex POC queer coded characters. Like in Steven Universe, I mean, they're aliens.
Yeah.
You know, the queer codedness of them, or the POC codedness of them, it's just like their dark skin, and that's where you can figure it out, I guess. And the other one being Shrill, and there is a POC queer character, and I think that she tends to be pretty complex and representative of like somebody like me, but I also feel like those characters are very utilitarian, and that they're meant to humanize the white people and centralize the white people. So Steven Universe, the whole, you know, Pink Diamond and all these other things, storylines.
Even Connie, you know?
Yeah. That's still, we're still humanizing the white folks. So when we're thinking about like, this is a meaningful representation, what are the questions that you're asking yourself, or what are the metrics that you have set up to say this is meaningful versus this is not so meaningful, or something that we should work on? Or is that even your process?
Okay, just because of time, I'm going to have like one of you guys answer it.
I have an answer.
Go ahead.
Okay. When I look at stuff, I think who's creating it, what's the intent behind it, And so it's like, is this a person from the community? Are they doing it to tokenize, or are they doing it to represent? And then if it's to tokenize, then I go back to who's creating it, who's funding it. Then if they're doing it to represent, I look at that, like, how are they representing? Are they doing it in a way that, like, if they are trying to represent it, but it's not by somebody who's from the community, do they have writers of the community? Do they have research behind what they're doing? And then I'll even look at people, if I'm not from that community, I look at people from that community online, see what they have to say about it too. Like, I was going into like Moana very tentatively, you know? And so I was looking up, how do people feel, like, from this community feel about this movie coming out? Because it was not made by people really in the community, but the intent was to represent, and they did a lot of good research, and a lot of people had very mixed feelings about it, you know? So I think those are the 4 things that I look at before I make my own, like, real judgment on it, on if I feel like it's doing good work or it needs improvement.
Okay, there was another one over. Oh, sorry, she went over then.
I think that one of the other things that's often left out is queer fat people.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically.
Yes.
I can really think of 2 people, which is Fran from Trill and Eddie from Vita. And
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Eddie's so sweet.
Such a sweetheart.
I was wondering if you guys have any thoughts on, like, queer fat.
I think it's BS. I feel like, I'm just gonna do real quick. I think it's BS, and the L word was nonsense for that same exact damn problem. Like, everybody is not a size fucking 0. Let's be real. So I think it's nonsense. I think it's bigotry, and I think that hopefully that'll get better. 'Cause I'm seeing more people who are not a size 0 in general on TV and in movies. So hopefully in queer media, we'll pick that up and get it together as well. Not to rush. I'm just looking at the time.
Media is very one track. It seems like, even though there's a lot of, captains in the kitchen or whatever, it seems that they can only focus on one thing at a time. And it's like we're still trying to get, like we have people of color we're working on, and then there are various intersections. And with the lack of interaction with people like that, they don't know. So either they'll hire the people, which they should do, or they'll go off of memory. And then we have we have the visibility, but the representation sucks. And so we still have to work on getting to a place where both can sort of come together and we can have proper representation. Because I don't just accept tokenism and the face is just there and I'm supposed to be satisfied with that. No. If it's bullshit, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. And I just call it on that. I don't care who's involved, because you could have somebody who screams, I'm an ally, and they still don't get it because there's always blind spots, right? Yeah. So I think it's important to continue to speak up and listen, tell people what you think. They're listening online.
Okay, here then here.
I'm just going to ask when you conclude to talk about your Patreon or anything where we can fund you.
Oh, thank
We
you.
will post it on Twitter and get everyone's information, because we
Thank
gotta
you.
throw money
Appreciate you.
We are
Yes.
creators.
Absolutely, legit.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the reminder.
Yeah.
And then I think that something that's really important that actually someone in another panel told me in terms of like giving ClexaCon feedback is like, yeah, you could email them, but they have these exit surveys that most people ignore.
Oh yeah.
Legitimately, you're gonna get an email and you're gonna ignore it. And I'm letting you know, like, when you say to them, or putting into their paper trail, this wasn't good. We need a bigger room for this. The ways in which like disability was handled was bullshit. Like, you have to put that in their paper trail, because legally, they ask for that information, it's in there, and they have to interact with it. So I know you're gonna wanna, post-con feelings are real, but I know you're gonna wanna ignore that exit survey, but everyone
I always fill it out.
needs
Same.
to
Yeah.
do the exit survey, and you need to put in honestly what your experience was, because that's the only way that they're going to, if everybody says this was bullshit, there's no way that they can successfully run the con without responding to that feedback.
Same thing for if you loved something. If you thought something was completely, absolutely awesome, let them know that too, so they can do more of it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
Like I
any
said,
panels or anything that you like.
Panels,
Anything.
like people and
your favorite booth in the artist alley, let them know. So you can
Yeah.
get back. Maybe help them out, get a little discount on it or something. They work hard to get here. It takes a lot of money to ship all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Any-
we're the last panel, so we could
Oh, we are?
do a
So
couple
if you have
more
any more
questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go in the back. I was just nervous. I felt bad.
Until they kick us out.
Actually, two.
Sure.
Which one of them ties sort of to the earlier discussion about money, but so the queer people of color panel, they talked about crowdfunding for projects and content, and then I also heard like there were some panelists that you wanted to have that couldn't get here for
Yeah.
financial reasons. So is there some sort of mechanism for us to crowdsource to get more?
You know what? For next year, we can definitely do that.
You should figure something out.
I can
Let's
have
brainstorm.
some in mind that I want to drag over here because they are fantastic people
Well,
and should be here.
There's one avenue. I mean, like, I have to give ClexaCon credit. They do have one avenue that people can try to get at least some money, maybe not totally paid for, is the scholarship.
Yeah.
So I know they advocate. I mean, I know they advertise it, but sometimes I think a lot of people don't know about it a lot. So definitely, if you see information once the scholarship is open, definitely promote that on all your socials for those who are on social media. Because I know not everybody wants to do that, but like promote that. But also maybe give ClexaCon some feedback about maybe there's some other way, or you know what, tweet us, DM us, and we'll try to get together maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, try to figure something out.
Figure something out. We have a whole year.
Yeah, because we need help getting more people out here, and I think that's from like all walks of life. A lot of people really want to come. I've heard so many people say they want to come, but we're
It's
I
in
don't
an
know, so
expensive city too, just to
Yeah.
be here.
Yeah.
Like
help.
this makes it inaccessible because
Yeah.
like breakfast today, like just
you have
alone cost me too much.
I mean, I
like
paid $17 for a coffee and a donut.
yeah, like
Here.
She was foolish. She got it from the hotel.
yeah, like
The Starbucks line was really long.
if
That
you
was just
want
bad.
you want affordable food, you gotta walk like 2 blocks on the subway or something like that.
Yeah. for
So like
real.
Las Vegas. Yeah, yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah, it's like
Can't walk that.
it's
I'm so
Las
tired.
Vegas is
Everybody
a
has the liberty
very
to
privileged area to have
yeah,
it in.
because not
Yeah.
everybody has the liberty
Like,
to just get up and
4
go.
3 of us are East Coasters.
Yeah, I grocery shopped. I did like
That's a plane ride.
prep.
You know what? Help each other out, man.
So
So I think that something, and like you were saying, like a bunch of us are East Coast people.
Yeah.
So
the struggle is real.
A lot of the representation that I have seen that are not, that are people of color are from the East Coast. I will say that. Or they're famous and live in LA. You know.
so I was talking to Chloe Say, who moderated the queer POC panel in the larger room that I couldn't get to. Sorry about that. One of the things she mentioned that I thought was really interesting was the idea that having a panel in a bigger room is good, but having a panel in that specific room creates a barrier. It doesn't feel as intimate as it does here. They can't see the crowd. They can't really see the crowd because of the lights. There's a lot of people on that panel. It's only 1
There was
hour.
like 8 of them.
Yeah, it's only 1 hour. Dr. Abad, I know, can speak to that. 'Cause you was on the panel.
She was on the
You
panel.
were on the panel, and
Karen was on the panel too back there, I see.
and it was. It's,
My bad,
and
never
it's-
mind.
it has become, the first year we did it, when I was here, it was in a room like this that was packed, and it turned into something that has become a little bit more awkward, and it doesn't feel as I don't know if genuine is the right word. It just doesn't feel. I don't feel as connected to it because it's in a larger room. So they have bigger rooms like this
Yes.
than this that can hold. I was just in one talking to Leslie Ann Brandt. That room is huge. It's just a smaller version of this, but it still can feel a little bit more intimate than like this 700-foot. I don't know if you have anything to speak to that,
I can speak to that and the meetup that happened after.
which I missed. I'm sorry.
We were sick.
I get it.
I
One
was
of
real
the
sick.
interesting things we discussed was that we didn't have enough time. thinking about and this year we also had 2 queer people of color meet up because we're overextended and the struggle is real in terms of getting here. I live down the street. So one of the things we discussed is doing a group me so we can talk about each other's work and talk about each other's content. The other thing we discussed looking forward is having a longer space, right? Like either a suite or a lounge that's always existing, and this is POC specific. So we could check in with each other and do the self-care things when things happen. I hope y'all know. Well, you know.
Yeah.
Disability volunteer, yeah.
So, because we want more folks here, but
Yeah.
it's expensive
Yep.
on the strip. If you get off the strip, if you can get off the strip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strip's ridiculous.
Yeah. Having a POC safe place would actually be a really good idea.
It's
I feel like a
you know,
disability room would be helpful too.
there should be a lot of different rooms. I just wonder what the response would be, because we live in a community where bigotry and racism and sexism still exist. Just because we're marginalized doesn't mean we don't deal with some of the same issues. We just exist at an intersection now, and we still deal with the same shit, and I wonder how I always wonder about backlash. That's just anxiety. The anxiety me being like, well, people will feel
Backlash.
feel discriminated against, and that's just something that might come up. But I think that it's a good idea to have those rooms and to check in, because sometimes I get overwhelmed, even personally, with sensory noise, sensory overload, and just the things that happen in the everyday, the microaggressions that you still experience. You still experience it here. Yes, this is supposed to be an inclusive space, but let me tell you, the microaggressions are still, there. People still hold their bags tight when I sit next to them in this space. So I just want you to know that this is, it's real.
And we notice.
Yeah. Those are the things that I notice. And I'm not always sure how to respond to it, because don't laugh, because I'm in this space and I'm seen as a leader, and I don't know how, I know how to respond, but that may not be the proper way to respond, so.
Yeah. I feel like I know we have to wrap up too.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna say,
Yeah, I just feel like we need ASL interpreters in all panels.
Yes.
Like regardless of request.
Oh my gosh.
And we need Braille on our signage, because there's honestly, I think about accessibility all the time with especially like deaf and blind students that I work with in the past, and like thinking about the fact that you have to personally request an ASL interpreter, and like if you are blind, I don't know how you would navigate your way through this place. So yeah, that's the more accessibility things that
in CART, which is live transcription. Like, so what you would have is like someone transcribing everything that we're saying, and the text or transcription would be projected on the wall or on the board. Like I'm hard of hearing and have like audio processing stuff. So literally what I'm using right now is an app where like it's just kind of like Google inspired, where like it's writing everything that it's hearing so that I can read it, and that way I have access to the conversations that are going on. And this really what you need in a situation like this is someone typing it out, and so that, and not just for obviously myself that I have it on my phone, but so that everyone has access to the information, because there's definitely people who are hard of hearing, audio processing, and even if they're totally abled in that sense, like everyone benefits from having everything that we're saying transcribed, because there's going to be things that you miss, like it's just beneficial. Accessibility needs to be prioritized.
I've had a professor say that she disliked the subtitles in a movie because it pulled from the experience. And I was like, that was the only way I was able to experience it. Like, You had a quick question, I think then.
Curious, one of the things I've been thinking about the entire time I've been here is whether or not the mic system is ever able to be hooked up to like hearing assistance devices, because that's something in schools that I use a lot as
Yeah.
a teacher, and I just have not noticed anything for that. And also been panels where they just gave up on using the mics.
Oh, that's the worst. Use them.
I'm not exactly sure. I think we definitely need to boot that over to the organizers to see if there's something they can do about that. And I
Yeah.
also just want to mention, I'm not totally unaware of the fact that this intersectionality panel in media has veered away from media. I'm aware of this. It's just that we're overtime anyway, so we're kind of
Yeah.
like just discussing things that
Yeah.
involve our intersections in general.
Yeah.
So totally understand that we have veered a little bit away from the media side of things.
I mean, unfortunately,
We're the last panel, so they
Yeah.
are letting us go apparently.
yeah, they can kick us out if they want. Unfortunately,
We'll
the
wrap it up in 5 though. don't worry.
thing about our experiences is that they're not going to know unless we tell them. They're not going to think about these things like what you mentioned, and accessibility issues and issues that we've had, to have a room where we can go and self-care and stuff like that. They're not going to think of it because they're not going to know to understand these problems that we have. So unfortunately, it is up to us to put in the work and say, hey, we need these things. This is important to us. And hopefully they will listen, and maybe next year will be a lot better.
This stuff may be a simple Google search away, but the fact of the matter is most people won't take it upon themselves to do that Google search.
Yeah.
And it unfortunately usually falls to the default of like people of color and minorities to be that voice when everybody has that. Most people have that ability now to educate themselves.
Okay. I am going to wrap it up. I'm looking at the time again.
Awesome.
And I know people have to go.
Yes.
Thank you guys all for being on our panel. Thank you guys for coming out and for staying
Thank
so
you.
long.
Yeah, staying 15 minutes.
Asking awesome questions. Definitely hit us up. Really quick, if you guys don't mind telling all of you on Twitter, I believe.
I tag
I am.
everyone on here on Twitter. So.
There we go.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we at Latinx Geeks, we're going to tweet out everybody's handles so that you guys will know who they are.
And
Find us on Twitter at Latinx
Patreon
Geeks. So we can,
information or
and
coffee
we'll also send out your
information or
coffee, Patreon,
PayPal,
whatever
cash.
happens to be, Venmo, if you need
Venmo.
that. Let us know, and we'll get all that information out to you guys. Thank you so much for coming out. And if you have any really cool things that you do feel like represent you in terms of like media, you think somebody's doing an awesome job in queer media, also let us know so we can promote
Tweet
it.
us. Tweet
Okay?
us.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.
Yeah.